It goes without saying that free agency has entirely changed the NFL draft. Teams don't want to roll in on draft day with glaring holes on their roster, pigeonholing them into having to draft certain positions with their first round draft pick. Now, off the back of that, NFL GMs might lie with their words, they do not lie with their money. So looking at what teams have done in terms of talent they've brought in, and also what they've done in letting certain players walk, will sort of suggest to us now, if we follow those breadcrumbs, what teams are looking to do on draft day. So through that lens, we're now going to do a mock draft Monday based purely on prediction, what I think teams are going to do now off the back of free agency, but also based on need. Because if you haven't addressed a certain need in free agency, it's very likely you're going to look to do that on draft day, and often with a very high draft pick. So make sure you subscribe for more NFL draft content. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree with any of the picks I'm about to make. But let's get right into it with the Tennessee Titans. Now, the most important move the Titans made this offseason, this free agency period, is a move they didn't make. They made no move to sign a quarterback. Yeah, they brought in Brandon Allen. That simply does not count. They've not brought in a serious quarterback to remotely even quote-unquote compete for the starting job with Will Levis. They've not brought in a Daniel Jones. They've not brought in a Justin Fields, even someone like a Joshua Dobbs. It is literally just Will Levis, and there's no way in hell this team is going to roll into the season with Will Levis as their clear-cut QB1. So that strongly suggests that the Titans are going to look to draft Cam Ward to me, which is the selection I'm going to make here. Now, previously, I have thought that the Titans would be a trade down candidate, that Cam Ward is a level of a quarterback who is my QB1, don't get me wrong, but is not a Caleb Williams, is not a Trevor Lawrence level of prospect where if you're sat with the first overall pick, you have to simply take him. Last year, Cam Ward would probably have been my QB4. I think he's still a very talented quarterback, and that's why I think it's a good decision that the Titans are going to draft him. But the fact that the Titans also bolstered their offensive line, they signed Dan Moore Jr. to a big deal, slight overpay. They also signed Kevin Zeitler as well. They're going to move JC Latham now to the right side. That retooling of the offensive line and not signing a quarterback suggests very strongly, and the fact they need a quarterback, right, suggests very strongly to me that they are going to draft Cam Ward with this first overall pick, which massively, massively shafts the Giants, but we'll talk about them in just a second. Now, the Browns, they also made a big move. They signed Myles Garrett to the biggest non-quarterback deal in the NFL. $40 million a year, $123.5 million guaranteed. And they also signed, interestingly, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka as that edge to, presumably, opposite Myles Garrett. That, to me, suggests they're setting themselves up to draft Travis Hunter, the wide receiver cornerback hybrid from Colorado. Why I think this works for the Browns and makes quite a lot of sense, actually, is because Hunter can be the upgrade at cornerback that the Browns need opposite Denzel Ward, replace Martin Emerson Jr. essentially. And what I would do with Travis Hunter, which is what I think the Browns should do, is they should play him full-time at cornerback and then allow him to play part-time at wide receiver. And that's because you can't have a part-time cornerback. If Travis Hunter is a full-time wide receiver, he can't just come on the field for a few drives, right? Defenses need they need chemistry and they need to play together. They need to have those reps. And it's also the playbook in the NFL, guys, is so much thicker than a college playbook. Even for Travis Hunter, having to learn an offensive and a defensive playbook, all of the audibles, all of the different play call changes that might happen, like, in the middle of the game, if the green dot, the linebacker or whoever it is for the Browns, the defensive captain on the field, is changing the call, you need to know that stuff inside and out. And Travis Hunter is an incredibly cerebral player, incredibly athletic, game IQ off the chart. But I just think you're going to get diminishing returns if you expect Hunter to be a great cornerback and a great wide receiver while playing both of them full time. So I'd play Hunter at cornerback, replace Martin Emerson Jr., and then be a rotational, situational wide receiver next to Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. And I think with those three, that's quite a good-looking wide receiver core, actually. I think Tillman and Jeudy showed you flashes. I don't think you're that confident that either of them are like the guy, but having Hunter there gives you a high floor on that offense when he's on the field. So that's what I think the Browns are leaning towards with getting Myles Garrett back and signing Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Now, the Giants. as I said, they have been absolutely shafted. And honestly, I feel really bad for them because it's through no fault of their own, right? They apparently last year were trying to trade up with the Patriots to draft Drake May. That didn't happen. They tried to sign Matthew Stafford, trade for him. They had the trade compensation ready for the Rams in terms of in terms of the Rams accepting the deal. They also had the money on the table ready to potentially lure Stafford away. In the end, it wasn't enough. They even signed his brother, well, not signed. They even hired his brother-in-law to work for the team. And ultimately, Stafford decided to stay in LA and not go to New York. So it's not for a lack of trying. And I would bet very good money that the Giants are also trying to trade up with the Titans. I reckon they're blowing up their phone 24/7 because this is the kind of scenario they are fearful of. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have been assured in not so many words, if they don't win more games next year, they are going to get fired. And by more games, I suspect that's a playoff appearance. I suspect that's 9-10 wins. And ultimately, we can all sit here as more objective, from a more objective standpoint, and acknowledge that drafting Shedeur Sanders at 3 would be, I think, and I'm sure many of you would agree with me, an absolute disaster. However, ultimately, human error is a massive point of the draft, right? The general manager, Joe Schoen, his job's on the line, right? He's not thinking logically. He's not thinking long-term because he's not going to be here long-term if they don't win more games. So Giants fans, I'm sure you're going to hate this because if I was a Giants fan, I would hate it too. But I think this is looking like Shedeur Sanders at 3. There's just not enough quarterbacks to go around. There is Kirk Cousins still out there, which we'll talk about when the Falcons have their pick in a few picks' time. But I just don't see the Giants being able to come out of this quarterback musical chairs without anyone apart from Sanders. I think that's honestly their only option at this point with how the draft and how free agency's gone and how the draft's looking, rather. It's ugly, but it's unfortunately destiny. Now, the Patriots, they've had a lot of money to spend and spent a lot of it on the defensive side of the ball, signed Milton Williams, signed Harold Landry. That takes defensive need kind of off the table a little bit here. But there is Abdul Carter, right? Which is so tricky because I think this is a very realistic scenario. Well, it's very realistic now that either Travis Hunter or Carter falls, depending on what the Browns do. And I honestly don't. I think the Patriots would take Hunter before they took Carter because they've just signed Landry. Are they going to add another edge? This is the thing. Are they going to go for talent, Carter, or are they really going to go for need here? Which, looking at the offensive line last year, yeah, they've brought in Morgan Moses at right tackle and they've got Mike Onwenu at right guard, but there's still 3 other positions they need to fill. And for as great as a talent as Abdul Carter is, he's not going to be able to block for Drake May. So honestly, I know it might sound crazy, but I think the Patriots are still just going to lock into offensive line here. I think it's that much of a need. And for me, the choice is Will Campbell or Amar Membou. I would also think Teta or McMillan would be on the board here for me, and I'm sure the Patriots would consider it. But I think you can get another weapon in the second round. You're not going to get a starting caliber tackle in the second round, really, for the most part. So for me, it's either Will Campbell or Amar Membou as predictive here. I think Mike Vrabel will love Will Campbell, similarly to how he loved Peter Skoronski, another shorter-armed offensive line prospect. But Will Campbell's arms are just so short, 0th percentile wingspan. And it's not about height, it's about physics, it's about arm length. And if Will Campbell can't effectively shut down NFL talent at edge with his shorter arms, then his talent is kind of irrelevant here. So I'm going to go with Amar Membou. I think Will Campbell is the better offensive line prospect, but a lot of teams are going to have him at guard, and I don't think a team is going to draft a guard at 4. So I'm going to go with Amar Membou here, the tackle from Missouri. Now the Jags are a really interesting one here as well. They've got Trayvon Walker on one side. They've got Josh Hines-Allen on the other side as their 2 edge rushers. They need interior defensive line. What? I'm gonna go really rogue here. And I am gonna trade with the Carolina Panthers because they have the pick from the LA Rams. They got pick 57. And Abdul Carter's on the board. So I'm going to force this trade through. It's not about the trade compensation, okay? Don't freak out about the trade compensation. I think it would be more than just this, to be fair, but it's only 3 spots in the first round. So the reason why the Panthers are going to trade up is because Abdul Carter has fallen far enough now, and they still need edge help. Like, they signed JC Horn this offseason, they re-signed Adam Thielen, they re-signed Tommy Tremble, but fundamentally this defense needs difference makers, and they were in the mixer for Milton Williams. Apparently it was all but confirmed, and then he like last minute pulled out because the Patriots just slammed more money on the table. But I think if Abdul Carter falls, which I don't think it's that likely, but I think the way the board's fallen so far, with Cam Ward at 1, Hunter at 2, Shedeur at 3, Amar Membou at 4, I think it's possible, guys. And I think at that point, the Panthers would try and trade up. And I think it makes sense for the Jags to trade back, get a bit more draft capital, continue to add to that roster, and try and help Trevor Lawrence. So obviously the Panthers are now going to sprint this card in for Abdul Carter, the best edge rusher in this class. And like I said, it's really not out of the question that Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter falls. And honestly, I think it's more likely that Carter falls, given the level of talent that Travis Hunter is and how highly regarded he is as a player. And I'm sure NFL teams will think the same. Now, the Raiders at 6. Their big deal was Geno Smith, right? They brought in Geno Smith. That's taken them out of this quarterback market. Great move from them. I love Geno Smith. I think he's an overhated, underrated, underappreciated quarterback. I think a lot of the offensive line woes have been placed on his shoulders. I think he did a fantastic job in playing really well in the face of a terrible offensive line. So they don't need a quarterback. Suddenly the rest of the offense is actually looking pretty decent. You've got Brock Bowers, you've got a good enough offensive line, you've got Colson Miller on the left, at left tackle, you've got Jackson Powers-Johnson at center, you've got Jacoby Myers at wide receiver, but you've got no one after him. Now the question is for me here, I think the 2 players that I'm considering are Tetairoa McMillan and Ashton Jeanty. I do believe Daniel Jeremiah, when he has McMillan falling a bit lower in the draft. I love McMillan, guys. I've been McMillan pilled. I would take him at 4 to the Patriots if I was making the decisions, genuinely. But we've got to remember that, what's his name? Pete Carroll is the oldest coach in the NFL. He's going to want someone that's going to come in and immediately impact his offense. Yes, they signed Raheem Mostert to a 2-year deal or something like that. He's 33 years old. Okay, running back is definitely still on the board. I think it's going to be Ashton Jeanty. I think Carroll's going to see Jeanty, see the potential impact to his offense. Analytically, we can kind of have the conversation about wide receiver impacting the game more than running back, purely on like positional value and how they're used. I don't think Pete Carroll's going to really listen to that. He's someone that likes running the ball, apart from the one time he needed to in the Super Bowl, obviously. And I just think Ashton Jeanty is going to be the pick there. So the Jets at 7. Now, the Jets have signed Justin Fields to a 2-year, $40 million contract with $20 million guaranteed. Tells you what they think of this quarterback class. They're not drafting Jackson Dart at 7, let's put it that way. What are they going to do? They obviously lost Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers is gone. They've lost quite a lot of talent, actually. They lost DJ Reed. I think cornerback could be on the board here. I know it's not a need that PFF have. They brought in Brandon Stevens, but I'm not mad on him. Lost a lot of talent on the interior of the defensive line. So it's a question of Mason Graham or McMillan. Or tackle, because they also lost Morgan Moses. Oh, guys, the Jets are in bits here, aren't they? Could this be a Will Johnson? I know they drafted Will Johnson. It could be Will Johnson, but could this be the Will Campbell pick? They lost Morgan Moses. They have Justin Fields. Mate, the Jets are in a really ugly position for a team that was meant to basically win the Super Bowl this year. They got a lot of holes on this roster and they're basically upgrading. I'm really torn at this point. I think I would go McMillan or Graham, but I do think that they would like another tackle to play opposite for Fashanu, and they've got a new regime there that are going to want to build through the trenches, right? So I think it's either going to be Graham for me or Will Campbell. Goodness gracious me. This is hard. Or is it the Texas? Or Kelvin Banks. I think he's being slept on. Oh, I'm struggling. I'm gonna go with Will Campbell. Am I? Or am I going to go defensive interior? Let me think out loud. Interior defensive line, they lost Javon Kinlaw and Solomon Thomas. And at the moment, it's Byron Cowart is their other defensive tackle opposite Quinnen Williams. If you had Graham and Williams with the edge rushers they're getting back healthy in like Will McDonald and their other first round pick from a few years ago, whose name is now escaping me, but they've got really good edge talent still. That would be a really good defensive line, which I think the new regime would like to continue to build around. Flip side, though, is that I don't know what's happening to Tyron Smith. They've lost Morgan Moses. Yes, they've got Olu Fashanu, but they need another tackle. So it's a question of which trench are they going to focus on, and the fact that this is a deeper defensive tackle class than it is tackle class, and obviously NFL teams are well aware of that. I think they would pass on a Mason Graham here, get another good one at the top of the second, and I think they're going to go with Will Campbell. That's pretty mental. I've never done that before with the Jets, but that's what free agency does, is it completely changes the needs. And I think Will Campbell's a damn good player. It's just a question of can he hold up at tackle. Now, the Jags. This is a dream scenario for the Jags, right? Traded down. Yes, they need McMillan as that wide receiver 2 next to Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, those two together would be amazing. But defensive line, they've got Trayvon Walker on one side. They've got Josh Hines-Allen off the other. If you had Mason Graham in the middle, that's a really good defensive line. And this new general manager, the bloke that's like my age, has said that he's going to prioritize the trenches. I think Mason Graham is going to be the pick for the Jags, even if they don't trade down. I think he'll be the pick at 5 for the Jags. Now, the Saints. What are the Saints doing? They signed Justin Reed. Why? Like, you're not at that position to sign a good safety. What's that going to do for you? And they signed Chase Young to a 3-year, $51 million deal. Is Chase Young the first person in history to get generational wealth based purely on aura? Because this guy's genuinely not done that much apart from his rookie season. I mean, he had 7 sacks last year. Like, he's not set the world on fire, let's be brutally honest. They still need defensive line. They still need wide receiver. And they need running back. What are the Saints going to do here? Could this be Tyler Warren? I know it's always been kind of like the Saints pick. I don't know, man. The Saints are just BPA. If we're being honest with ourselves here. I mean, McMillan again, but what I worry about McMillan is I worry that NFL teams are going to be lower on him than I am. So I would sprint the card in for McMillan here. But if I'm trying to be more loyal to the predictive, based on need, I mean, look, they do need wide receiver as well. And I don't think they'd go Tyler Warren this early, to be honest. I don't think James Pierce Jr. would be the pick. Luther Burden, I don't think he'll be the pick. I think Kenneth Grant is the only other player that I'm looking at here that I could see being the potential selection. Let's go with McMillan. Like I said, I do think NFL teams might be a bit lower on him than I am. If I'm believing what people like Daniel Jeremiah are saying, with him kind of going in like the teens, even early 20s. But the Saints need wide receiver, and I bloody love McMillan. I think he's so good. I think he's so damn good. Now, the Bears. Obviously, the Bears have killed it in free agency, completely retooled their offensive line. Jonah Jackson, Drew Dalman, Joe Tooney, 3 new players on the interior of the offensive line, essential for Ben Johnson's offense. Had a great offensive line in Detroit, will now have a much better offensive line than he previously would have done in Chicago with the Bears. If Ashton Jeanty was on the board, I think that would be the pick. However, they do need defensive line help. Edge is looking a bit bleak. Deo Odeyingbo, Grady Jarrett at the interior defensive line position. That's not going to stop me from drafting an interior defensive lineman. Safety. Malachi Starks. I think he killed the combine, despite not testing technically that well. His chip testing, like his chip measurements with how he was doing the drills, was incredible. Like, his speed is so good. Would they draft Starks here at 10? With Ben Johnson's first. Ooh, Tyler Warren. Yeah. Tyler Warren. Cole Kmet. I know Bears fans really like him. Cole Kmet is the definition of a replaceable tight end. Tyler Warren, though, on this offense, with Ben Johnson, with Rome Odunze, with Caleb Williams, with DJ Moore, I think that's a damn good pick. I've cooked there, I think. Now, the 49ers, so they've lost a third of their roster. Their Super Bowl window is closed, right? They've lost Javon Hargrave, Tanaloa Hufanga, Chavarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw. The 49ers are very good at drafting, but they've got a lot of holes they need to fill. And for me, this is just got to be the pick. It's got to be offensive line, I think. And I think it makes so much sense for it to be Kelvin Banks. I think he fits the scheme. I think he can play guard or tackle, which is what they need. And I don't see how the 49ers don't draft offensive line with the 11th pick here, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, the Cowboys. Jerry Jones, what the hell are you doing? He's running this team to the ground. They've never made big free agent signings, and they're just now collecting first and second round busts like they're infinity stones. Jonathan Mingo, mid-season. They've now got Kaya Elam. They've got Kenneth Murray, Javonte Williams. Why do they get Javonte Williams and let Rico Dowdle walk? It blows my mind. I don't know though what the Cowboys are going to do here though, because they go crazy like this. Like Jerry Jones is unpredictable at his core. I think Jihad Campbell could be a very Cowboys player. It's not a need. I think they do need an edge though with DeMarcus Lawrence gone. I could see them drafting Amar Hampton at 12. I'm not even kidding. God, no, I don't. I can see that as well. Like I could see like a Tyler Booker at 12. Good Lord, I could definitely see a Tyler Booker at 12. Just because he plays for Alabama. What are the Cowboys doing? Okay, we're just going to make a pick here. Like Brock Hoffman's currently their guard. He can be upgraded. I've got to get into the mind of Jerry Jones. Dangerous place to be. And I might never come out of it the same person. But I think they're going to look for the trenches as well. And who have we got at edge? Like, could this be the Shamar Stewart? Or it could be Mikael Williams. I'm going to go with Mikael Williams. Like, big school player. Someone that I think Jerry Jones is going to love. They need an edge with DeMarcus Lawrence gone. I like Mikael Williams. Not this early, but I do really like him. I think he's got the potential to be a great player. Not realising that potential just yet. But, oh, God, I was in Jerry Jones' head there for a bit too long, guys. Now, the Dolphins. They brought in Ashton Davis and Ifatu Melifonwu as free agents. They don't need a safety anymore, so the Starks pick, RIP. They need offensive line. This is going to be Josh Simmons for me because they need to protect Tua. They need to get better at running the ball, and they need to bolster the trenches. And Josh Simmons at this point is a tackle that might be the best tackle in the class, but you're kind of getting it at a bit of a discount because of the injury. Now the Colts. They've brought in Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward. They have good wide receivers. They do need a tight end. This could be the Colston Loveland pick. But are they gonna give another weapon to Anthony Richardson? They've got a lot of tight ends. None of them can offer what Loveland can offer, but they've got good wide receivers. They've got Pittman, Downs. They've got Alec Pierce. They've got A.D. Mitchell. So I don't think they'll necessarily lean towards tight end in the first. But they do need, and they brought in Daniel Jones as the quarterback competition, which I actually really like. I think that's genuinely like a good level of competition for AR. If he can't beat out Daniel Jones, he shouldn't be the starting quarterback anyway. They're both mobile. Obviously, Anthony Richardson is an insanely superior athlete to Daniel Jones, but you can run the same style of offense with both of them in it. It's not like you've got a Joe Flacco and an Anthony Richardson, whereby the offense has to completely change with the quarterback being a rushing threat and the quarterback not being a rushing threat. What are these guys going to do? I think they're going to maybe still look to bolster the defense with their new defensive coordinator coming over from the Bengals. I think this could be Jihad Campbell. And I think linebackers are actually going to go pretty early in this draft just because it's a little bit of a weaker draft class. And I think really it's a crapshoot from here on out. Now the Falcons at 15. Wide receiver, Ray McLeod is currently a starting player. I would hate that. They did release Grady Jarrett. He had 34 pressures last year. That was third most on the team. That's not an insignificant amount of pressures to be losing. That might be opening the door for Ruka Rororo. He was overdrafted there last year. They're going to trade Kirk Cousins, I think, when the dust settles in this free agency period, when Rodgers and Russ, who at the time of recording have not signed, knowing my luck, they're going to sign right now to the Giants, and it's going to completely change this mock draft. But at the time of recording this, they have not signed, and we don't have news. But I think they're going to trade Cousins to basically one of the teams that don't have a quarterback. And I think it's going to be the Browns. If I'm putting money on the table, I think they're going to reunite. I think Kirk will want to go back and play with Stefanski. I think the reason how they got Garrett back, despite saying he wanted to compete, and he said he's been told what they're going to do at quarterback, unless they're going to build one out of clay, Kirk Cousins is one of the better options they have. Now, at 15, though, what are the Falcons going to do? They need edge help like I need air to breathe, and they've always needed edge. But they also need wide receiver. I do think, though, that you can get, it's a deeper wide receiver class than people give it credit for this draft. And I think you can get a really good one in the second or in the third, because you've already got Drake London. I really like Darnell Mooney, but I don't think wide receiver 3 is more important than literally edge 1. So not wide receiver, I meant edge. But who is the pick going to be then? James Pierce Jr. I like, but I think he's going to fall. I like Donovan Ezaraku a lot. Shamar Stewart as the guy that blew open the combine. Personally here, I think I would go for James Pierce Jr. I love James Pierce Jr., but I think he's actually going to fall lower than we think. So for me, and I think Shamar Stewart, yeah, it's going to be Shamar Stewart. It's going to be Shamar Stewart. Nowhere after that combine performance is he going to go past 15. Like, I think his production is a lot, but I think his production can be explained away by how the Texas A&M defense made him play. I think he'll be a lot more productive in the NFL. I like Shamar Stewart a lot. But this is not really about what I would do, guys. So that's why I'm not giving that much of analysis on the players, more focusing on the team need and what I think they're going to do from a team perspective. So the Cardinals, they did a fantastic job in free agency. Really good job. They added Dalvin Sweat, they added Josh Sweat and Dalvin Tomlinson. They're going to get BJ Ojolari and Darius Robinson back healthy. So suddenly the defensive line, I think, is not that much of a need anymore. Not to say they're not going to address it in the draft. They definitely could. But the defensive line isn't looking too bad. I think cornerback, really. I think they're going to want to upgrade Sean Murphy-Bunting. They drafted Max Melton last year or the year before. And this player who I'm thinking about in my mind is someone that I struggle to work out where he's going to go, Will Johnson. But I think teams are going to be confident that he's a very good player because he is a damn good player. And it's just that injury, which I think is kind of making him not a kind of hyped prospect for people like me and other people in the media. I really like that pick, actually. That's what free agency just does for you as a team. It allows you to go in completely other directions. And again, I've never not given the Cardinals defensive line. I love it. Now, the Bengals. Okay, the Bengals team building strategy, bonkers. Right, absolutely bonkers. They are one of the least cash-rich teams. As of January, they had the least amount of money tied up in non-quarterback players out of anyone in the league. They're not financially aggressive because they're not cash-rich. Teams like the Eagles have a great understanding of how the cap's going up every year. If you play your players early and structure the money cleverly, you can kind of just keep these players. Like, they just signed, I can't remember who the player is, to a 2-year deal with 4 void years. Like, the financial gerrymandering the Eagles are doing is worlds apart from the financial caveman approach the Bengals have, which is that they don't like giving guaranteed money. They are financially conservative. They could have paid T. Higgins 2 years ago, which would have been a deal that now would have aged like, say, the Michael Pittman deal, who is now being paid like the 16th highest paid receiver in the league. But they've given him the franchise tag twice. The price for Jamar Chase has gone up now that Myles Garrett's been paid $40 million a year. So that's going to have to be $41 million a year now, because they've publicly said they're going to do that for Chase. And they can't afford to re-sign Hendrickson. So the whole thing is just insane to me. They're going to keep, it seems. I don't think wide receivers are needed because by all accounts, they're going to re-sign Higgins and Chase. But that's just the most crazy team building strategy I've ever heard in my life. They are paying Joe Burrow as the second highest quarterback in the league, and deservedly so. Joe Burrow is fantastic. So they're second highest in quarterback spending. Great, no issue with that, right? It's where you want to put your money. But they're going to be first, presumably, the highest team in wide receiver spending, with nothing else anywhere. Joe Burrow, I had to fact check this, I didn't believe it when I saw it. Joe Burrow has won comeback player of the year twice because he's been injured twice and lost whole seasons. There's no offensive line, there's no defensive talent to speak of. Lou Anarumo was shown the door because, well, Jesse Bates was gone. They can't afford to re-sign Trey Hendrickson. Like, you can't play in the NFL and succeed without talent, and the defense has none. So Forget wide receiver, that's not going to be a need. Guard is a big need, but this has to be defensive line. This has to be. And I would have gone Shamar Stewart as that dominant edge. I don't think Mike Green will be the pick. I don't think James Smith Jr. will be the pick. I don't think Donovan Ezaraku is like dominant enough. I love Kenneth Grant. I think he's going to go really early. I'm going to go with Kenneth Grant here as that run stuff, which, again, the Bengals need. They get run over on the ground. Mate, the Bengals, I'm sorry, they're a mess of a team. I have no idea what they're going to do. Now, the Seahawks, they have had a very interesting free agency period. Traded Geno Smith. Traded DK Metcalf. Released Tyler Lockett. Looked like an offensive rebuild. Then they've brought in Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And they've also re-signed Ernest Jones. Looking at the net, I love Ernest Jones. They've also added DeMarcus Lawrence. I like both of those moves. That defensive line is looking really good. You've got Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed on the interior. Then you've got DeMarcus Lawrence and Uchenna Nwosu and Boye Mafe off the edge. And Ernest Jones as that kind of linebacker linchpin that is essential for the Mike McDonald defense. Offensively, they've now got Clint Kubiak as their offensive coordinator. And the way that he runs his offense with deep crossers and posts and corners and digs on the backside doesn't really fit what DK Metcalf is good at running. So that kind of made sense. But they've now got Jackson Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett, who are a lot better, don't get me wrong, at running those more lateral route trees, right? Not necessarily deep threats, but more lateral route trees. But as I said, they don't win deep down the field. JSN also lined up 83.6% of his snaps in the slot. That's the third highest in the NFL. And he had 1,130 yards this year. You're not going to take him out of the slot. But Cooper Kupp had 65% of his snaps in the slot. There's only one snap. There's only one slot, right? I don't see how these guys pair together on the field at the same time. So I assume you're going to move Kupp out wide because he plays out wide more. And I don't think you want to threaten Jackson Smith and Jigba's great production that he had last year. But who's going to be the perimeter wide receiver in this offense? Marquez Valdes-Scantling with hands like frying pans? I don't think so. So I think they're going to draft a perimeter wide receiver in this draft. But you have to, with Sam Darnold, who is very... can get exposed when facing interior pressure. This has to be an interior offensive lineman. And I think that is going to be Grace Abel, the offensive lineman from NDSU. Now, he plays tackle at NDSU, but he will play interior defensive line in the NFL. But that's what's crazy about the offseason for the Seahawks, is that they've not approached it in the same way the Bears have with rebuilding their offensive line. They are going into this draft with a massive need. And I think if it has to be Grace Abel. I don't know how it can't be anyone else. Now, the Buccaneers re-signed Chris Godwin. They brought him back. Jalen McMillan showed something. Wide receiver is set. They obviously got Mike Evans. I like their secondary. Here it says defensive back. I like Tyke Smith, Izzy Jamal Dean, Zion McCullum. I think they're all right. Linebacker is the big one. Edge is also quietly decent. Yes, they lost Joe Tryon Shoyinka, but they brought in Hassan Reddick, and Yaya Diaby quietly had 70 pressures last year. But Jahdae Barron is on the board, and actually I think he's a fantastic fit with being able to play anywhere along that secondary. So I really like that pick, actually. I'm cooking with this mock draft. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Now, the Broncos, they've had a fantastic offseason. Free agency period, rather. They didn't bring back anyone, sorry. They signed Tanalo Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw. They made their strengths stronger defensively, which is fantastic. Best defense in the league last year, and added even more talent to it. Brilliant. And they signed Evan Ingram. I'm no Evan Ingram truther, but that's what the free agency is all about. Previously, it was these guys at 20 were going to draft tight end. That was always going to be the pick. Now they have Ingram. They don't need to do that anymore. This might still be Colson Loveland, but it doesn't have to be. I think Broncos really are in a fantastic spot to just go pure best player available, frankly, with how they've approached this offseason. But I think they're going to look to draft a wide receiver. And I've made this pick so many times. It's boring to me. But I think Luther Burden's got to be the pick here. With them needing wide receiver, they've got Cortland Sutton, they've got Devon Vele, they've got these bigger bodied threats, and they've got Marvin Mims, again, not really that short guy. He's more of a deep threat, and he's more of like a role player in that offense. I think Luther Burden can be that proper wide receiver too, next to Cortland Sutton, and a great fit. And another weapon for Bo Nix. Now, the Steelers at 21. So their commitment to being aggressively mid has blown my mind. I've always been a Tomlin defender, and I've always pushed back when Steelers fans are saying that they're mid and et cetera, et cetera. They were kind of caught in this quarterback purgatory. They're still in it, and their commitment to like trading for someone like DK Metcalf, paying him $30 million a year when they don't have a quarterback at the moment is crazy to me. Genuinely crazy. So I don't really know what's going to happen. They're going to have a quarterback that's going to throw the ball deep to Pickens and DK, who are just going to be running fades on the outside. And I guess you hope that the draft pick from last year, Roman Wilson, can be the slot guy. I don't know. But it's pretty ugly in Pittsburgh. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I don't know what the hell they're going to do draft-wise then. They need a cornerback. Dante Jackson ain't it. They lost him anyway. Oh, God. What the hell are the Steelers going to do here? Genuinely, I could not tell you. They did lose Najee Harris. Could they draft Amar Hampton? I honestly think they could, as that Harris replacement. I mean, God. I'm going to put it because I don't know what else the Steelers are going to do. If you guys do, let me know in the comments. I do not know what the Steelers are going to do with that pick. They are all over the shop as a team. Genuinely all over the shop. Now, the Chargers, they previously have been the Omarion Hampton marriage. They have, though, signed Najee Harris. So that kind of puts an end to the Hampton dream, I think. But from that dead dream, like an ashes... I've not nailed that. From the ashes of that dream, like a phoenix rising, is the arrival of the Travion Henderson at 22 to the Chargers. Because I think it would work so well as that like thunder and lightning. You've got Harris as the thumper. You've got Henderson as the kind of the scalpel. I think it would work so well. I don't, though, think that would realistically be the pick, because if he's on the board, we all know that Harbaugh from Michigan loves his Michigan players. Another weapon for Justin Herbert, Colson Loveland, obviously going to be the pick there. Home run. Love it. Now, the Packers signed Aaron Banks to a mental deal. Yeah, okay, fine. The structure of the deal was a bit better. But as soon as you've got to justify a deal by saying, oh, well, look at how the money's structured, you're saying that because he's not a good player, or he's not worth the money you're paying him, fundamentally. Now, the Packers still, off the back of free agency, I'm surprised they didn't try and get DK Metcalf. They need an edge. They need a wide receiver. They need an alpha wide receiver. They still need an edge. They still need a cornerback as well. They don't know what the future is with Jair Alexander. Their needs are exactly the same as when they went into free agency, which means they haven't had a good free agency period, frankly. Now, if we're looking at wide receivers, right, we have a Emeka Egbuka. I think his skill set overlaps with Jaden Reed. Matthew Golden could be the pick. I also like edge here. I like Donovan Ezeraku. I actually think he'll go. I'm going to go with Donovan Ezeraku here. I think he will be gone in this area of the draft. I think he's got a great bag of pass rush moves. I think he helps the Packers in a position of need. He's not quite the alpha that like a Shamar Stewart or a Michael Williams or an Abdul Carter could be, but I think he's got a really high floor. Now, the Vikings, they re-signed Aaron Jones, but he is 30. So running back is still definitely a need. But I think what's going to be the pick for them here, though, is Jalen Walker. Now, I think Jalen Walker could honestly go anywhere in this draft. He could go Panthers at 8, all the way to, for me, as a second-round player. But I think his positional versatility would work really well with Brian Flores in that defense where he really values that positional versatility stuff. He can cover, he can rush the passer. Now, personally, I don't think he does either of those things particularly well, but he can do them in theory. He can be that quarterback spy. He calls himself a hybrid linebacker HLB, and that's what he said he wants to play in the league. So I could see the Vikings being a very good fit for that, despite me not necessarily believing in him as a actual first-round player. Now, the Texans, oh my good God, you're going to see me crash out live, okay? What are the Texans doing? We had a bad offensive line last year as it was, one of the worst in the league. To help that improve, in theory, because that's what general managers' jobs are, is to make your team better, not to make it worse. So to help that improve, we've got rid of Laramie Tunsil. We traded him to the Commanders for a package of picks. And then we got rid of Kenyon Green, who allowed the third highest one-on-one pressure rate, to then acquire Ed Ingram, who allowed the most pressures in terms of one-on-one pressure rate, and Laken Tomlinson, who allowed the fourth most. What are we doing? What the bloody hell is going on in Houston for us to we have 4 question marks on the offensive line in terms of we need to upgrade them. Get rid of the one guy that can be good enough. Yes, I know there's locker room questions and chemistry questions, and maybe he can be kind of worked in the aggregate with having a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive system. It just is crazy to me. I'm sorry. I know there's explanations for it, but I find it absolutely crazy. And we're now in the third wave of free agency. There's nobody left. I don't know who you're going to get at pick 25 when you need an offensive lineman. I'm terrified that this is going to be Tyler Booker, which is what I'm going to do for us. And that's how you know, guys. That's how you know that I'm loyal to the draft, the mock draft, because he's not on edge, because I would absolutely despise Tyler Booker in the first round. I don't think he's a first round player, and I just think he's going to go in the first round though. And he's been described as Will Anderson as the offensive line. We already have Will Anderson. I would hate this pick, but we need offensive line. And again, we're like the Seahawks. We're a team that have gone into the draft without addressing any of our needs in free agency. We still need wide receivers. Yes, Stephon Diggs is still out there, but even if we signed him, I'd still want a wide receiver. And we still need offensive line. In fact, we've made our offensive line worse. So, again, we've botched this free agency period. The Rams. Now, they've re-signed Tutu Atwell. They've got Devontae Adams. I think they'd look to add a tight end, but I don't think they're going to do that in the first round. I think in the second, they'd add someone like an Elijah Arroyo or a Ferguson from Oregon. Linebacker. Oh, I think more linebackers than we suspect will go, again, considering the strength of this draft. I don't think, though, that Carson Schwessinger will be the pick. I don't think Demetrius Knight, again, it's a bit early for him. Cornerback, who's on the board? I really like Siobhan Revel. I like Trey Amos as well. Oh, they need a tackle. Do they need a tackle? I've got them as this is ugly. This is ugly for the Rams here. Let's go cornerback. And I really like Siobhan Revel. So I'm going to go with Siobhan Revel personally. I think he will be a first-round player when it's all said and done. Now, the Ravens, wide receiver, I think is always a need for this team, even though not officially by PFF. They re-signed Ronnie Stanley, absolutely massive, but they did lose their guard. They need an edge. I feel like they always need an edge. Oh, defensive back, Malachi Starks. Malachi Starks would be fantastic. Slot, playing the slot. They're really good at... I do love Starks there. Or would they instead go, which I could definitely see being the case after his combine, or would it be a Nick Emanwari? Personally, I don't have Emanwari as a first-round player. But Emanwari with... Or would he overlap a bit with Kyle Hamilton? That's what I worry about with this here. Who's still an edge that's on the... Let's go with James Pierce Jr. I think this is the point where he can come off the board. And I think it's quite good value for James. I think it's a fantastic value for James Pierce Jr., actually. Now, the Lions at 28. They need an edge. They need a wide receiver. They need guard. They need linebacker. They don't need a cornerback. I think edge here, Mike Green would be fantastic. I'm going to go with Mike Green. Do I think he'll go in the first? If he does, I think it's going to be this late. But Mike Green as an edge 2, opposite Aiden Hutchinson, love that. I think he's a Lions player in terms of what he brings, that like tenacity, plays with his hair on fire. I like that pick. Now the Commanders, they were the ones that traded for Laramie Tunsil. Great, they don't need a tackle anymore. You know what? I think the Commanders are going to go cornerback here. Looking at who they have at cornerback, our lad has Mikey Sainer still being left cornerback, which seems crazy to me. Like, he's a slot cornerback. I know this also signed Noah Benogany, but that just seems weird. So I'm going to go Trey Amos here, the cornerback from Ole Miss, as that second cornerback opposite Marshall and Lattimore, who even then didn't look fantastic for the Commanders at the end of last year. Now the Bills, they've had a great offseason, re-signed Josh Allen, signed Josh Palmer, signed Joey Bosa, re-signed Gregory Rousseau, re-signed Khalil Shakir. Killed it this offseason, really killed it. They don't need edge. I've always gone defensive tackle for the Bills, just because I think they need to get a bit sturdier against the run, and I still think they do. But they can also kind of have the ability to go a bit like best player available here. And I look at wide receiver. I think like there are a lot of wide receivers on the board here still. Like, problem is that they all kind of overlap with one another when you need an outside guy. But I think, is Matthew Golden then the pick here? Like, I know they have Keon Coleman, to be fair, as the outside guy. They've got Khalil Shakir, they've got Dalton Kincaid. They might not look to add a second first-round wide receiver, but look, Egbuka's on the board here. I don't know where he's going to go, because, I don't know where he's going to go. Having said that, though, looking at their depth chart, Josh Palmer, is their other starting outside wide receiver. So this is pretty bold. But I genuinely think he could be a first-rounder, and I'm going to go Jaden Higgins here. I'm putting it out there. I think Jaden Higgins is worthy of a first-round pick, personally, and I think he will be, or could be, a back end of the first round pick. It's ropey. I've kind of strayed slightly there from the need, but they've had just such a great offseason, the Bills, that I think they can add a luxury pick like this. Would they go back to back with Higgins and Coleman in terms of first round picks, wide receivers? I don't think so, but I think Higgins is definitely worth it. Now the Chiefs, they lost Joe Thuney. They have no offensive tackles they can trust. This has to be an offensive tackle. I think they're going to trade up for one. I think the Texans could also trade up for one. It'll be Josh Connolly Jr. here. I don't think Josh Connolly Jr. will be available at 31 on actual draft day. I think Arianti Ursary could be, but fundamentally I think the Chiefs are going to be definitely looking to trade up and draft one, because they simply have to have a tackle. They played Joe Thuney at tackle in the Super Bowl because they didn't trust their actual tackles. They still got Creed Humphrey, still got a good interior, but the tackle spot and one of the guard spots now that Thuney's gone isn't looking great at all, and that's not where you want to be. Now, what are the Eagles going to do? They lost a decent amount of talent on the defense side of the ball, lost Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, they re-signed Zach Bourne, Keely Ringo is currently their starting cornerback. It says wide receiver here, but they got Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. Obviously, Emeka Egbuka's on the board. But considering they released Bradbury, Slay, and they also lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, cornerback is a big need, but they never draft for need. Where's the value? Right, let's put our Howie Roseman hat on. Obviously, Starks is the value in terms of talent, but you have Cooper DeJean as that kind of Starks role. So then where is the value here for them? Nick Scouton might be. I mean, really, it's Emeka Egbuka, isn't it, as that wide receiver 3? And you can see Howie looking at this and going, well, I've got Smith, I've got Brown, and as Egbuka as the third wide receiver. Let's go for it. Harry Roseman doesn't draft for need. He drafts for value, and that is one of the better value picks on this board at the time. So, as you can see now, here is the entire mock draft I've just done. Now, again, this is based on what it looks like the teams are going to do after free agency and based on needs. This is not necessarily what I'm saying 100% is going to happen or what I would do. But if you have a disagreeing opinion, if you think that the team is going to do something else, or you just don't like the pick, let me know. That's what the draft's all about. And if you want more draft content, make sure you subscribe. But I've been your host, Dom Corbs. This has been Corbs NFL. We'll see you on the next video.